Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Greg Furman and this is the Forex Weekly Outlook for the week of March the 12th, 2018. Now, to get started this week, we're going to begin where we always do with that all-important US dollar index. Now, we do have a fresh triple EMA cross from VantagePoint. Our key support level now is going to come in at or about the 89.41 level. We're closing at 89.64. We would be looking for the dollar to move higher based around the non-farm payroll number on Friday, a very, very strong payroll number, probably the best one I've seen in the last couple of years. Wage growth wasn't quite up to expectation, but I don't think that's going to be enough to stop the Fed. Currently, the U.S. economy firing basically on all cylinders here. So when we look at the additional indicators from VantagePoint on that all-important dollar index, we can see that basically we're starting to move higher on the predicted differences. Our predicted MACD has not crossed the trigger to the downside. The predicted RSI still running flat, but very strong at 57. So we would look for, after a potential initial sell-off on Monday, for the dollar to regain some strength for the rest of the week. Now, nothing is for sure in trading. That's evident. But when we look at basically the technicals and the fundamentals, it does point towards dollar strength. But the market as of late simply has not wanted to buy US dollars in any way, shape, or form. So we look for that to change this coming week. But again, I think we're largely still caught in a particular range. Now, if we can see the predicted RSI break above 60, that will trigger a dollar rally. But when we look at the individual crossovers, we can see that our short term is now crossed to back to the upside with the neural index. But our medium and long-term crossovers, the medium term is still a little weak, but the long-term looks pretty good. Now, when we compare this to gold, basically gold has had a big, it's recovered on Friday, but what I will point out, what I talk about with my own direct clients on a regular basis, is that whatever happens on the Friday of the non-farm payroll, in most cases, the exact opposite happens by midday on Monday. So I would caution against early trade on Monday. Wait for midday, but gold is still carrying a bearish tone to it while below 1327. That's our key pivot area. Now, the additional indicators in gold are still pointing that we could see a little bit more strength. But again, that's going to depend on a number of fundamental factors also with North Korea, with what's going on with Trump. But for now, gold basically just moving sideways. Very little has changed. That brings us to our equity our oil contracts, excuse me. Once again, we're stalling on that critical VP level, the 61.88, that long-term crossover point. We cannot seem to break and hold above this area for any length of time. So if the dollar does gain a little bit of strength, I think that oil will move lower after an initial move higher, potentially towards the 64.50 on initial dollar weakness, and then it'll probably fail. You can see how I've drawn basically zones in here to identify these levels, but largely the primary range is still fully in place between basically the 67 level and down around 57.50. Very, very little has changed there, guys. Now, with the equity markets, we've had a trend line break. We've got a triple EMA cross, but we've had a big move up on Friday. In my respectful opinion, for the wrong reasons. The market has misinterpreted that labor report. They're going to rethink the Fed's position on Monday and Tuesday, and you'll probably see the equity markets rally initially and then turn lower. Now, we are still well within the range between the 28.80 mark and down here around 25.30. Nothing has changed here, guys. Nothing has changed at all. The equities still carry a mildly bullish tone. But I wouldn't be getting too excited that we're going to blow through the 3,000 mark here anytime soon. Now, as we come into our main commodity, or our main currency pairs, excuse me, the Euro-US had an initial move up during the beginning of the week, a buy the rumor, sell the fact. We got a good payroll number. Euro, you can see, moved down basically on the Thursday. But there's not a lot of strength, not a lot of buyers in either the US dollar or the euro. So looking at those monthly cycles, we're probably going to see the euro move lower. Now, we have closed below that critical level of 23.15. We're closing at 23.04. Now, when we look at those individual crossovers, we can see that the short term is back down with the neural index. The medium term is still up. The long-term crossover is dead flat. So a very mixed signal here, but the initial bias to begin the week, at least through to about Wednesday, is we're likely going to see euro trying to make another run at the range bottom. That's how I currently see this. So when we look at our additional pairs here, when we look at the British pound US dollar, the British pound US dollar, again, in a very tight technical wedge formation here. However, what I will point out to everybody is that we have had multiple failures along that critical VantagePoint long-term crossover pivot area. That area, 138.81. Now, we've poked above it 3 days in a row, but on Friday we came up and kissed that level to the number and then had a significant failure off there. So, but right now I would say there's a bias to the downside. The neural index down. When we look at the individual crossovers from VantagePoint, the short term is still down, the medium term is still down, and the long term is still clearly down. So not exactly a bullish setup for the pound dollar. It would all depend on US dollar strength or weakness across the board. But probably midday, again, midday Monday, we're going to see the pound after an initial rally. It was more than likely, based around the VantagePoint indicators, is going to sell off. Now, with the dollar yen this week, once again, we have just seen absolutely little to no buying interest in this particular pair. And now, bigger money is buying yen, and I believe that to be China. So any retracement higher that we've had has met with very strong selling pressure. So when I look at this right now, we do have the medium term crossing the long term predicted difference. We've had a very strong payroll number. This could be it, guys. This could be the one that pushes dollar yen through that critical VP level. 106.94 is that current level, but the VantagePoint level has been predominantly right around the 107.80 mark. I would also be very cautious in that particular zone, as again, sellers have moved in every single time. Now the predicted MACD looks good, but the predicted RSI is at 51.1. So to be clear, guys, this advance higher right now is corrective in nature. If those equity markets turn lower, that is likely going to push this particular pair lower also. Now, as we come into our three main commodity currencies, the US CAD, a significant failure that I talked about in last week's Forex Weekly Outlook, right around the 130.15 area, we're coming lower. But this move lower is actually corrective in nature. The Canadian jobs number was absolutely horrible. Now, it's gotten some relief because Trump has backed off the steel and, well, he hasn't backed off the tariffs. He's given a temporary exemption to Canada, and I'll stress the word temporary, meaning that essentially he's still planning on putting the tariffs in, but Canada has a bit of a reprieve for now. But the Canadian jobs number on Friday, pretty horrific. But the unemployment rate did tick a little bit lower in Canada. Now, there's a lot of different combinations of things that are happening there, but I would anticipate a test of 127.63, excuse me. If this level holds, then the primary uptrend is likely going to continue. Now, the VantagePoint indicators, quite mixed here with this, but when we look at that short-term crossover, it's down with the neural index and the medium-term predicted difference. But our medium-term and our long-term crossovers are still hesitant to put out a confirmed sell here. So I would watch this week the 127.63 level. That is the critical VantagePoint pivot area. Now, additional pivot or additional commodity currencies, excuse me, is actually the Aussie US and New Zealand US. These two pairs virtually trade together for the most part, but New Zealand is the stronger, in my respectful opinion, of the two of these. Now, we're going to make sure we draw in a proper trend line here, and we can see that we do have a trend line break. However, on Friday of the non-farm payroll, that clearly favored the US dollar. So, in my respectful opinion, if we slip back below 78.21, we are probably going to retest the bottom part of this range down around 76.90. So again, we've had this big move up in the Aussie, but gold moved down, not up here, guys. Gold moved up slightly on Friday, but again, for the wrong reasons here. So we must take this into consideration. The VantagePoint indicators are very mixed on this. The initial move is likely to be up, but we do not have a triple EMA cross, to be clear. Our short term is up, but our medium term is very sideways, as is our long term. Now, our predicted moving average is rising, but it's still, in my opinion, not enough to get really excited about buying this particular pair. Now, as we look at the New Zealand pair, again, virtually the same trade as Aussie US. The first thing you guys want to make sure you're doing is identifying the current range. That's 74.45, and the bottom end of that is about 71.80. So when we look at this, we're all tangled up here, guys, right around this key vantage point level at 72.80. We've closed 72.83, not exactly a bullish setup here. Our predicted RSI is at 52, but predicted MACD, they're all kind of just sitting sideways here. So I would be cautious with this one. Go to your short-term crossovers. The short term is up. The medium term is slightly up, but the long term is still yet to confirm a reversal to the upside on this particular pair. And again, we are staring into potentially some very strong US dollar buying, at least for potentially the next week or two. So with that said, this is the Forex Weekly Outlook for the week of March the 12th.